Chapter 25. These are also Proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah, copied out. It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter. The heaven for height, and the earth for depth, and the heart of kings is unsearchable. Take away the dross from the silver, and there shall come forth a vessel for the finer. Take away the wicked from before the king, and his throne shall be established in righteousness. Put not forth thyself in the presence of the king, and stand not in the place of great men. For better it is that it be said unto thee, Come up hither, than that thou shouldst be put lower in the presence of the prince whom thine eyes have seen. Go not forth hastily to strive, lest thou know not what to do in the end thereof, when thy neighbor hath put thee to shame. Debate thy cause with thy neighbor himself, and discover not a secret to another, lest he that heareth it put thee to shame, and thine infamy turn not away. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pitchers of silver. As an earring of gold, and an ornament of fine gold, so is a wise reprover upon an obedient ear. As the cold of snow in the time of harvest, so is a faithful messenger to them that send him, for he refresheth the soul of his masters. Whoso boasteth himself of a false gift is like clouds and wind without rain. By long forbearing is a prince persuaded, and a soft tongue breaketh the bone. Hast thou found honey? Eat so much of it, so much as is sufficient for thee, lest thou be filled therewith and vomit it. Withdraw thy foot from thy neighbor's house, lest he be weary of thee, and so hate thee. A man that beareth false witness against his neighbor is a maul, and a sword, and a sharp arrow. Confidence in an unfaithful man in time of trouble is like a broken tooth, and a foot out of joint. As he that taketh away a garment in cold weather, and is vinegar upon nitre, so is he that singeth songs to an heavy heart. If thine enemy be hungry, give him bread to eat, and if he be thirsty, give him water to drink. For thou shalt heap coals of fire upon his head, and the Lord shall reward thee. The north wind driveth away rain, so doth an angry countenance a backbiting tongue. It is better to dwell in the corner of the housetop than with a brawling woman in a wide house. As cold waters to a thirsty soul, so is good news from a far country. A righteous man falling down before the wicked is as a troubled fountain and a corrupt spring. It is not good to eat much honey, so for men to search their own glory is not glory. He that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls. In verse 1 it says, These are also Proverbs of Solomon, just like the other ones that we've had, most of them are, which the men of Hezekiah, King Hezekiah, who reigned about 250 years after Solomon, these men copied out. So these were probably, these may have been hidden in the temple wall, and they may have been found. They may have been stored there as a way of protecting them from being destroyed when there was unrighteousness at the temple, which there was. The heaven for height, verse 3, and the earth for depth, and the heart of king is unsearchable. Now what that means is basically goes down to the kings. There's no way to tell how high heaven is. There was no way for them to tell how deep the earth was. And the heart of a king is unsearchable. And basically, you can't know why a king will do things. Can't know what his reasoning is. Because he has, and of course, obviously, kings and other rulers have pressures on them at their level that are different than yours at your level, wherever you happen to be. And only they know what their pressures are. And then it says, in verse 4, Take away the dross from the silver, the impurities out of the silver, and there shall come forth a vessel for the finer. In other words, you can make finer jewelry, finer bowls, finer whatever out of silver if you refine it so that all of the impurities are taken out. And then it's comparing in verse 5 the impurities as in a similar sense as the wicked people from before the king. If you get rid of the wicked people from before the king, his throne shall be established in righteousness. He will be a better vessel for the justice for the people. Verse 26, always good. Put not forth thyself in the presence of the king. In other words, don't try to stand out. Don't try to get really close to the king. In these days, this was very important. The ones who were closest to the king were the ones who were the closest and best advisors. Don't put yourself in front of other people. Don't stand not, it says, in the place of great men. Far better it is for the king to say to you, come closer, I want you here, than that he should put you lower down in the presence of the people that he has in front of him. One is very nice. One, for a man of pride especially, is not very nice. Debate thy cause with thy neighbor himself, and discover not a secret to another. In other words, if you've got a problem with a neighbor, go to the neighbor and straighten it out with him. Do not tell another person what the problem is, lest the one that you tells other people, and you are made ashamed. And then it says in verse 11, a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pitchers of silver. In other words, highly precious. That's what that means, highly precious. And as an earring of gold, men and women used to wear earrings in those days, and an ornament of fine gold, which they always like to have on their clothes if possible, some of them as nose rings, so is a wise reprover upon an obedient ear. If you have an obedient person, and you have somebody who knows how to talk to that person so that person can understand, the person is, as an ornament to them, something very precious which they appreciate and like to have around. Verse 14, whoso boasteth himself of a false gift is like clouds and wind without rain. In other words, he might say, there's a couple of possible interpretations here. He might say, well, so-and-so gave me money or gave me food or gave me clothing or whatever, when in fact they didn't. That would be a false gift. Or they may have given a gift to try to influence somebody else, and that would also be a false gift. And in either case, the person would be like clouds and wind that promise rain, promise benefit, but that don't ever have any. So the person can give gifts to people to try to get them to do things, or they can say they received gifts, but it's all falsehood. It's all deception. Then 26, very good advice here. Hast thou found honey? All the honey that they had, there were no beekeepers in those days, so far as I know. Hast thou found honey? Eat so much as is sufficient for thee. In other words, eat what you like, but don't overeat, lest you become filled with the honey and vomit it back up. Doesn't do you any good to vomit it back up if you eat so much. Then it says, withdraw thy foot from thy neighbor's house. Now, to leave your neighbor's house every once in a while. Go to your own home, lest your neighbor be weary of thee and hate thee and not want thee to come back. It's nice to sort of make yourself scarce every once in a while so that they want you to come back. And then 19, confidence in an unfaithful man in time of trouble is like a broken tooth and a foot out of joint. In other words, nothing but grief. A broken tooth is going to hurt all the time, and a foot out of joint, you aren't going to be able to put any pressure on it and walk on it. It's going to be thoroughly useless to you. Lots of good things here.